Hello chaps, this is another quick video just look further into public expenditure. Specifically we're going to look at the reasons and the effects of changing levels of public expenditure. It builds upon the work we were doing last week. So the first thing I'm going to do is just reaffirm there's reasons for government expenditure, and broadly there are three reasons for why governments spend money. The first is macroeconomic management, spending to achieve the four macroeconomic objectives and avoid conflict. So this is spending to try and stimulate aggregate demand and aggregate supply in order to achieve good levels of economic growth, lower levels of inflation, low unemployment, and possibly as well affecting the trade balance. Another reason is equity and equality. The government provides state assistance to those in need and ensures a basic standard of living, e.g. age or income distribution or disability benefits. So age, we're talking about pensions, schooling for young children as well. Income distribution, we tax the rich and we perhaps give money to the poor people in terms of benefits, or they benefit from public services, so benefits in kind, and disability benefits as well to help people improve their welfare if they have challenges in their life. Efficiency and market failure as well is the third reason, and this is intervention to try to achieve an optimal allocation of resources, ideally with missing markets, so funding those public goods, increasing the consumption of merit goods, as well as intervening to cut the consumption of demerit goods, so the government spends perhaps on advertising against smoking and things like that. Effects on differing levels of public expenditure as a proportion of GDP. We had a look at the sheets last lesson, but differing levels of public spending will affect the following: productivity and growth, living standards, crowding out, which we'll look at in due course, the level of taxation, and equality. And as I said, if you complete the missing words task from lesson 2, that should all make a good amount of sense. So let's have a look then at crowding out. So to give it a definition, crowding out is where the rapid growth of the government spending may cause a transfer of scarce productive resources from the private sector to the public sector, where productivity might be lower. Lots of free market economists argue against increases in government spending for this very reason. They say it's going to lead to crowding out if the government spends too much money. And the workings for crowding out then, take the government. If it runs a big budget deficit to finance high spending, it must sell a lot of debt. It's going to have to sell a lot of bonds to the private sector. And getting these individuals to buy the bonds, buy the debt, will require attractive interest rates, so they're going to have to go up. And a rise in interest rates then may crowd out private investment and consumption, as there's a greater reward for buying government debt or saving money, offsetting the fiscal stimulus. So whilst G will go up, it's likely that C and I will go down. Eventually, the higher government spending needs to be funded by higher taxes as well, and this again acts to squeeze on spending and investment as there's greater corporation tax and greater income tax, reducing all the money going around in the economy. So fiscal stimulus is less effective in an expansion because at full capacity an increase in public demand crowds out private demand, leaving output unchanged with higher prices. If you imagine in an AD-AS diagram, I'm just going to draw it really small because I've got a diagram coming up here in a bit, slightly different. This is saying if our AD is here, our AS is like this, an increase in aggregate demand from increased government spending from AD0 to AD1 will do nothing for output, it will just lead to inflation. So here is the diagram to look at the market for loanable funds. Loanable funds meaning how much banks are going to lend perhaps to businesses or if they're going to lend to the government. So with increased demand from the government for borrowing, the demand for loanable funds will increase from D to D2, and that's going to see an increase in the interest rate, i.e. the price of borrowing, which is obviously what's going to lead to the higher interest rates that crowd out the private individuals too. So increased government borrowing may lead to a higher demand for loanable funds, a rise in market interest rates, and this increases borrowing costs for the private sector businesses. We can also though evaluate the crowding out theory The probability of 100% crowding out is remote, especially if the economy is operating below its capacity and if there is a plentiful supply of saving available to purchase newly issued state debt. Just to go over what 100% crowding out means, this is in reference to if, say, the government spent £100 billion, 100% crowding out would imply there'd be £100 billion fall in C&I, in consumption and investments. However, that possibility, as we said, is very remote. It's likely that if the government spent £100 billion, maybe only £50 billion of consumption and investment would fall. Keynesian economists, such as Paul Krugman, argue that fiscal deficits crowd in private sector investments. Well-targeted and timely and temporary increases in government spending can absorb underutilised capacity and also provide a very strong multiplier effect that generates extra tax revenue. Another criticism of the basic theory is that the available supply of loanable funds is not limited to just domestic sources. External finance is very large and it's available from other countries as well. So whilst British interest rates might be very high, interest rates from overseas might still be quite low and quite attractive for firms, allowing them to invest. Cool. So the fiscal multiplier, and this measures the short-term impact of discretionary fiscal policy on national output. So the fiscal multiplier measures the effect of a £1 change in government spending or a £1 fall in the level of tax or £1 change in tax revenue on the level of GDP. An example, if we look at this example from the IMF, the literature finds that government spending multipliers tend to be larger than revenue multipliers, i.e. so if we see an increase in someone's incomes or their disposable income because their tax has fallen by £1, that is going to have less of a multiplier effect than an increase in the government spending £1. And this is because we can avoid one extra round of people withdrawing from that pound. If we give someone an extra £1 in their income, they'll probably save some of it. Whereas if the government spends spends an extra £1, that is all spent, it all goes into AD, there's no savings immediately from that. So this is supported by Keynesian theory, which argues that tax cuts are less effective than spending increases in stimulating the economy, since households may save, again, a significant proportion of the additional after-tax income. The IMF also found that fiscal multipliers are generally larger in downturns than in expansions, and it also therefore supports the Keynesian view of using lots of fiscal stimulus when conventional monetary policy is found to be ineffective. To evaluate fiscal multipliers, though, it's determined by lots of factors, so it's not always great. Remember, the fiscal multiplier, or K, equals 1 over 1 minus MPC, equals 1 over MPW. The MPW, the marginal propensity to withdraw, is made up of the marginal propensity to tax, the marginal propensity to import, and the marginal propensity to save. So 3 different factors are going to affect the multiplier size. Examples of this could be financial stress. If there's uncertainty about job prospects, people might try and save lots, especially if they're not sure about their future income or what inflation levels will do. So if they get a tax cut, people might try and save their money, for example. The greater the extent to which higher government spending or tax cuts will feed into rising demand for imports. So if we give someone extra money, they might spend it all on imports, for example. That wouldn't necessarily help our own aggregate demands, and therefore would lower the impact on domestic GDP. Cool. As I said, this was just a really short video just to reaffirm some of the stuff that we already looked at a bit last time. But this is just to formalise that last bit of learning we need to do, and then you've got a task to crack on with after this video. Well done, gents. Nearly there. Keep going and crack on the last bit of work now. Good luck.